Thank you all for coming here today. I'd like to first start with an acknowledgement of country that we are meeting today on Ngunnawal country, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and I know there have been a lot of Aboriginal people here at the house this week, so I wanted to acknowledge their presence and their contribution. It's a very important and urgent issue that we've come to talk about today. I'm Jo Dodds and the coordinator of the Bushfire Survivors for Climate Action Group, and these are our members behind me, and there are many more of us. We came together because we're desperately concerned about the future for our families and our communities. We're just ordinary citizens, but we've all experienced the terror of bushfires. Some of us lost our homes, seen our communities be devastated, and we all grieve the toll that bushfires have taken, the loss of homes, of treasured possessions, of livelihoods, and most of all, of lives. Some of our supporters who can't be here today because they're still struggling with the after effects of fires. They're dealing with the insurers with increased fire safety ratings or plans to rebuild. And some, like our Greg Mullins, the ex-commissioner of the Fire and Rescue New South Wales, he'd love to be standing here with us today, but he is instead out fighting yet another fire, and he sends his apologies. We have sent invitations to all of the political leaders, and we've received an agreement from Mr Bill Shorten to meet with us today, but we are yet to receive a response from Prime Minister Mr Morrison. We're here in Canberra at Parliament House to demand that political leaders start listening to our stories, start taking them seriously, and start acting to reduce the threat that we are all now facing from damage to the climate. Because bushfires are now hotter and more frequent than ever before. Because the conditions which fan these fires are caused by the release of CO2 from fossil fuels. And the only way to save more communities from the devastation that we've seen is to move urgently away from fossil fuels and towards clean, renewable energy. The reason I'm here today is because on March the 18th last year, my community faced a devastating fire in the Tafra region. I wasn't at home when that fire started. I went to the riverbank, a kilometre or so away from my house, and I stood there for 5 hours and watched the fire come for my house with all of my possessions in it. I had nothing with me, and I watched the homes of my friends and neighbours burn to the ground while I waited for my house to burn to the ground. And I knew why this was happening. It was because of crazily hot, dry, incredibly strong winds that were blowing in mid-March, which is incredibly unusual. I was fortunate in that the fire stopped on my property. We didn't lose the house, we lost a few trees, we lost some timber, but we didn't lose our home. But my community was devastated with 69 homes burned. And many of those people lost everything because they didn't have the time to take things with them. It will take us years to recover from that, and we will always be changed by that event. There's no going back. The trauma will be with us for years. It's the most devastating thing you can have happened to you other than the loss of life. And we were lucky in our fire that no one died. There have been other fires that have happened to members of our group that have killed people. The heat wave that preceded Black Saturday killed more people than the fire. We don't talk about this stuff enough. The weather is starting to kill us. I want to introduce the members of our group now, and they'd like to tell you their stories and their experiences with bushfires. And first, I'd like to introduce Ali Griffin. And with her is her daughter Siena, Chisholm.
Hi, my name's Ali Griffin. I'm from Healesville in the beautiful Yarra Valley. We lost our house in Black Saturday bushfires. What breaks my heart is that my 4-year-old daughter had to go through that trauma of losing her house at age 4. It breaks my heart that she has to be here today to talk about that because we're not being listened to. We know what's going on. We know that climate change is the cause of this. But we've given the responsibility of looking after us to our politicians, and they're just not listening. We need them to make us feel safe again, to not fear bushfire every year. More than once, more than 5 times. We evacuate our house several times every summer, and it's not right. It didn't used to be like this. We moved to the bush because it was gorgeous. We live there, we love it. We love the people, but it's becoming a space that's unsafe, and that's not right.
Hi, I'm Siena Chisholm. I'm 14 and I lost my house in the Black Saturday bushfires. I was 4, so I don't remember too much, but I do feel like I'm going to relive it every summer. I've noticed that there's more and more natural disasters going on, and they're becoming more and more extreme. I'm worried that at 14 I even have to worry about climate change. I striked from school because I want our politicians to listen to what we have to say and act on it, because this is happening right now, and this is the biggest issue. The next school strike is on the 15th of March. Tens of thousands of us will join around the world for a global climate strike. Take us seriously, care about our future, and stop Adani.
And next, we'd like to hear from Jane Reynolds, who lost her home in another fire in the same shire as my fire, but the fire that took Jane's home started in midwinter. Jane.
Hello, I'm Janet Reynolds, and last winter I lost everything in a massive bushfire that was carried by 130 km/h winds straight through my property. Luckily, I got out alive after performing some dramatic acts and driving through the flames. However, 2 other people lost their properties, and of course the farmers around lost fences and sheds, animals and hay, and also other aspects of their livelihoods. The fire burnt out of control for about 6 weeks. It was impossible to actually do anything about it. Remember, this was winter, not even close to the bushfire season. Climate change is bigger than all of us. No more waffling and procrastinating. We want some action now. We need a real policy that will cut climate pollution, and we need to put it into action as soon as possible. Fossil fuels are not a safe option for our future. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Lynn Trindall, and she's from Winmalee in the Blue Mountains, and her community lost 194 homes in 2013.
I'm Lynn Trindall. Thanks. My name's Lynn Trindall, and I live at Winmalee in the beautiful Blue Mountains. On the 17th of October 2013, and this is spring, we came across a horrendous fire. 194 homes were lost. And that morning it was so hot, so windy. It was just so out of character with a beautiful spring day that we used to have in the Blue Mountains. My husband and I were at another meeting, community meeting, and about lunchtime we saw the black clouds gathering over our home area. So we took off from the place we were having the meeting, got home, and within about half an hour, maybe in an hour, we had to evacuate. And we knew we had to evacuate because the fires were just blazing everywhere. Everybody's grass was on fire out the front of their homes. Looking out the back of our house, the fire was coming up the embankment, and we don't move so easily these days in a wheelchair, but I had to really scramble as fast as I could in my wheelchair into the car, The car was not quite parked where we usually park, and down I go into the grass, into the garden. Fortunately, a fire truck was driving past in our street, and it took 10 or 11 people. They ran out. One beautiful woman, a firewoman, she said, "We'll get you into the car," which they did. They heaved the wheelchair, they heaved me, and into the car I went, and off we went. Fires were blazing around. As I said before, the grass was burning. As we drove past a house, it was crumbling to the ground around us. We had no idea what would happen behind us. I thought I definitely had lost our home. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but so many did. We escaped down to Richmond, was the only exit from Winmalee. We got off the mountain quick, fast, as fast as we could. But I'd just like to say I've lived in the mountains for 33 years or so. And before that, as a youngster, I'd go to the mountains for holidays. I see the weather changing. There's no cool breeze that comes of the afternoon anymore. The springs are the same as winter. We expect fires all the time, and this is not right. Climate change is here, and it's living with us now. When I see the fires happening all around the world, all around Australia, it just makes my heart feel very, very sad. So I say to the politicians, particularly the government that's in at the moment, they're just not listening. And I demand, absolutely demand, that this government that we've got at the moment do something very serious about climate change. We need policies, we need something to help us as people. We're just ordinary people. We're trying to go about our lives. We cannot do that with the threat of bushfires continually in our doorstep. So I just say one more time, I demand change. I don't believe that anyone could stand or should stand for this election that's coming up if they're not going to put climate change on the top of their sheets and their policies. If that's not going to happen, then they shouldn't be in Parliament. Thank you.
What's up?
So, thank you again for coming to hear our stories. And our campaign doesn't end here. Keep an eye out for us. We're going to be everywhere. There's a television ad coming up with Reynolds in it. We'll be speaking on the radio. We've already done a lot of interviews. If you see us in the street somewhere, say hello. Give us a bit of support because we need your backing. And if you're wondering what you can do about climate change, we've got some easy things that we need from you. We need you to vote with climate change in mind. And we need you to contact your local members, state and federal and council. Make an appointment if you're up to that, otherwise just leave them a message and tell them that you're concerned about climate change and why. You need to demand serious climate change policies that move us urgently away from coal and towards renewables, and that is going to mean no Adani coal mine. Just in closing, I wanted to mention a word that keeps popping up in the coverage of the weather lately. And if you haven't been living under a rock for the last year, you will have noticed that weather is in the news daily with catastrophes. And the word that keeps popping up is unprecedented. When you get a dust storm arriving in Canberra and Sydney that's come all the way from Birdsville, that's a message. When flying foxes fall dead from the trees because of the heat, that's a message. When the brumbies die of thirst in Central Australia and fish die in the Murray-Darling Basin, when there's snow on the mountains and our homes are on fire below, that's a message. But the leaders in this House aren't listening. Our Prime Minister, Mr Morrison, isn't listening. Mr Morrison, Mr Joyce, I've got a message for you. How do you think we feel when our homes are in ruins and our lives are changed forever and we know the science behind it, and we see you cavorting in Parliament House with a lump of coal? How do you think we feel when you laugh about the destruction of our children's future.